All right, let's say you're working on a graphic design project and you feel the need for some texture in it. Like, let's say you're just making some basic shapes in Illustrator and you say, these just look too plain for some reason. It needs something more interesting happening there. Well, there's three ways that I'm going to show you how to make texture. One of them is using the filter in Photoshop, which at best is okay. You get mixed results with it unless you use some special techniques. I mean, hopefully you agree with me that this looks just a little bit too computer generated, and that's what you really have to be careful of as a graphic designer trying to get a job out there, is not to look like someone who's lazy and just using the quickest way to do it. So this would be one way. I'll just run through it quick so you're familiar. Then I'll show you method number two, which would be to use these with a little bit of extra techniques added to them, and I'll show you a quick way to find some of those. And then my favorite way is just to create texture from using photographs and scans. It's so much more organic looking. So let's just start from scratch here. I'll create a new document inside of Photoshop, and we'll just make this just regular letter size. You want a fairly high resolution, so 300 is usually pretty good. And I would start out in RGB mode, even if you are going to eventually convert to CMYK for production work. And okay, so here's our stage, or our canvas, if you will. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a color by going over here to the foreground color, and then I'm going to, with this foreground color forward as opposed to the background color forward, whoops, didn't mean to turn that on, but this brings one forward, this brings the other one forward. I'm just going to hold down the Command key and hit delete, and it'll fill that all with one color. Then I'm going to grab a brush and just paint a couple strokes on there just so we get some different colors working. And you want to do this just so that when you're experimenting with them you can see if it makes a difference where there is a color change. Okay. And you could even try this working right straight from a photograph. So what you do is you go up to filter and you go to texture, and then it doesn't really matter which one of these options you pick because you can change around once you're inside of here. And let me make all this just a little smaller here, move it over a bit. So you know, I can switch from this to this, and you see each one does a little bit different bit of work in there. Some of them are fairly impressive right off that, especially when just used by themselves. Other ones, not so much. And a lot of them just blow up really quickly, meaning that they only work within certain tight ranges. Like, let's take, for example, this one. If I take and change the crack spacing quite a bit, it just starts to look very computer very quickly. And I just wouldn't use this ever in your portfolio because most of the creative directors know Photoshop well enough to know the basic features in it and just know the difference between someone who's trying really hard and someone who's just being lazy. There's these artistic features here that you can do different things with. So just, you know, try them. A lot of them look a lot different on an image than they do just on a couple colors, and you know, kind of get an idea with these previews here. So there you go. That's one way. The other method that's at least better than this totally lazy method would be to learn a little bit more about them. So what you could do is come out here to the web and just Google something like creating texture in Photoshop, maybe put in the version number, and this is not too bad of a tutorial out here. It's 30 best texture tutorials for Photoshop. Some of them make me just ask the question, why not just go get a particular thing? Like, for example, close this here for a second. Let's see. The solution is so obvious, like wouldn't you probably be better off starting with real grass, or couldn't you actually throw your genes on the scanner and scan them and get something even more realistic looking than that? I think some people do this just for the challenge of it. You know, easy to find a piece of wood. That looks just like the one that's in Photoshop. This one is fairly interesting. So, you know, if you want to give this a shot, just find this website, click on this, go in here. I've actually done this one with a class before. You start with kind of a default texture in Photoshop, but the way you start to make it look better is you then put a motion blur on it. So everyone's will vary depending on the amount of motion blur. Then you draw a selection in here and only pick certain areas to do the next step, which is to increase the brightness on it. And you end up with something that's fairly decent. All right, so that's method number two. But by far the best way is to go out and actually get your hand on some textures. So I have a folder here, I'll show you. And I got some of these by scanning. So here's just a crumpled up piece of paper thrown on the scanner bed. This bit of rust here was taken with a camera of a structure that's on the campus of Cal State Fullerton. Same thing here, it has water running on it, so it has this patina finish on it. Then this is just a crumpled up piece of tinfoil scan, and then it was crumpled up even more. And that really gives you some nice depth, kind of like the moon crater type feel. Wood works great, so I just threw some strips of veneer on the scanning bed. Inside of a sweater works nice, just about anything that has a texture to it. If you don't like the colors of it, don't worry. Usually that's one of the first things I do when I'm working with texture is strip all the color away from it and then add whatever color I'm using. But you'll see that most of what I do is just very experimental, and you just kind of luck into these textures. When you get one that you like, you save it, and the whole point of doing it this way is that it has more of a random feel to it. So let's, for starters, we'll go File, New, or no, actually, let's just open up one of those. So I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to go File and Open, and I'm going to navigate to that folder where I have my textures and open one of them. Okay, so here's that tinfoil. I could probably use this just exactly as is right now, but I'll show you some ways to get some better results. But if you just wanted to try to use it as is, what you could do is over in your Layers palette, and if you don't have this open, go to Windows and grab Layers here, and it'll pop open on your screen. I'm going to create a new layer by clicking down on this icon here, and I'm just going to throw a solid color over the top of it. So let's go ahead and throw this bluish color. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to hold down Option and Delete to select this color, and then I can just go up here in Layers and change this opacity to a lesser amount, and it already lets that color shine through. Or I mean, lets the texture shine through that color. So then you could just simply edit this enough to use it in Illustrator, or actually just take it in Illustrator like it is, put a mask on it, and use it. But what I noticed when I brought this out is that if you get pretty close in here, you can see there already are some local colors showing up and some different things. So it often helps to strip all the colors out of the things that you're going to use for texture and to increase the contrast of them. So let's go ahead and do a couple of those things. So I'm just going to go Image, Mode, and I'm going to switch over to Grayscale. I don't want to flatten, and yes, I'm discarding all the color. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. So I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And by dragging this slider, makes even the medium darks turn darks, and dragging this slider makes even the things close to white turn white. So in other words, the closer these two sliders become to each other, the more this becomes just like either black or white. And then I can slide this towards either one if I want it to be a little bit on the brighter side or on the darker side. Okay, now I didn't have to do that. And like I said, all of this stuff is just built on experimentation. But now if I go ahead, throw a color over the top of this, you'll see that the results are a little bit, um, less about the color that was behind it, more about the new color. So if I wanted to do that now at this time, I would have to go image mode and switch back to, and in this case I'm going to go with RGB mode. No, I don't want to flatten it. Quit asking me that. And then let's go back to this layer. Let's turn this on and let's recolor it. I'm going to hold down Option, and then you can see that I have a little bit. It's a little bit friendlier now. And if you were doing a big poster and you even with this up at like 94% opacity, it just makes the background a little bit different, a little bit, texture just kind of draws people in. They're wondering, do I see something in there? All right, so that's one thing you could do to it. Another thing that you can do to even limit the color choices more so is you could posterize this. So click on this layer again. Photoshop is very dependent upon what layer you're clicked on, so make sure if you're trying to do something to that layer that that one is selected. So we're going to go to Image, and actually this is under, yep, sorry about that. Yeah, it is. It's under Image Adjustment Posterize. But actually, before I do that, it's a good idea sometimes just to make a backup copy of what you had. And the easiest way to do that is just to drag this right on to the new layer icon. And now we get a new layer. Made this one by accident, so I'll get rid of it. Yes. Okay, and then we can just turn the other one off. And so this one we're going to posterize. Image Adjustments, Posterize. And how many different colors do we want to make out of that? Let's say if I just go with 2, now you can see it's even more of a stark contrast. If I turn this color back on, looks a little bit different than when I had just this one on. Very slight difference. Okay, so posterizing, pushing the levels on there. And then another thing that you can do, which is a lot of fun, and it makes it look even more random, is bringing in multiple textures. So let's go ahead and open up another one of these. File, and oh, whoops, File, Open. And I'm just going to navigate to another one in here. And this time, let's go with this thing here. Okay, so now I have this one open, and with the tabs, this one is still open, and this is on another tab. Now, if I didn't already have backup copies of these images, I would go to Image, and I would go to Duplicate, and then that way I could work on the duplicate image and not worry about ruining it. But you're going to see the way I do this. I'm not even going to actually make a permanent change to this. I'm going to strip it of all of its color right here in its original document. So I'm going to go Image, Mode, turn it into grayscale, discard all the color information, and then I need to drag it over to this image. Now I do need to make sure that these things are roughly the same size. So if I look at this one and go to Image, Image Size, I can see that this measures 5 inches by about 9.5 inches tall. Go over to this one, do the same thing, Image, Image Size. I can see that, yeah, it's just that it's wider than it's tall, but this will work fine. So let's go ahead and we'll take this and we'll rotate it. So I'm going to go Image, and I'm going to go Image Rotation and just rotate it 90 degrees. So now when I drag it on top of the other one, that should work a little bit better. Now I actually have to physically separate these tabs. That way I can get a hold of this one. So I'm dragging this with the with this selection tool, and I just dragged it right on top of here. And it'll take a couple seconds for it to render because they're fairly big images. So here it is right underneath this layer, and I can move this around, get it in place to where I want it, and then I can try those other tricks with it, like really increasing the levels on it. So I can go up to Image Adjustments, get levels again, and you can see all the information is already in the center just by looking at this histogram here. It tells you that there really was no dark or light information in there anyhow. And then I can, let's say I'm happy with that.